Science fiction is an art form that paints a picture of the future. A.R. Meridu. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm your host, Jacob Shamansky. Can you stand listening to synthetically narrated audiobooks? We're curious about your tolerance when listening to audiobooks using synth voices like your screen readers, and we know you have opinions, and that's why we asked our book club for a ton of responses, and that's exactly what we got. Ramya Amwithan is with us. Rams, there are some people, and this is a bit of an aside here, that apparently find their screen readers soothing. Are you one of those people? I was shocked to hear this.
I mean, I wrote the liners, so yeah, of course I can relate. It's not that it's soothing necessarily, but it's familiar and comforting. If you have a screen reader voice that you like, and please nobody pipe in here with your love of Jaws, because that's ridiculous. We're vetoing that out. Jaws is not. No. Anyways, but you can have a familiarity or a comfort with your screen reader voice, and then if you're not necessarily feeling another synth voice or a human narration of some kind, you can go to that. Right? You can't relate, seriously?
Not really. I feel
Hmm.
pretty indifferent about my screen reader voice. Like
Okay.
it's a comfort level, right? Is it because it's yours? It's your
It's
very
because
own.
you know what you're getting. You know the pronunciations you're getting, the mispronunciations you're getting, the tones, you know? You know what
It's
to
like
look
it's
for.
like that one chair you sit in all the time. You know all its little quirks, right? It's
Sometimes you just come home at the end of a hard day and you just want to listen to your screen reader.
the problem is when you're blind, that's all you do is listen to your screen reader. Whatever you're doing, you always need
Yes.
a screen reader, so you're constantly listening to it. How could it be soothing if you're listening to it 24/7?
I guess that's a fair point, but if you are gonna go listen to another synth, this is not maybe a direct comparison to listening to a human narration, but if you're listening to other synthetic voices, sometimes you're like, "Oh, Alex can do so much better
I'm
than
more of a
this."
Samantha man myself. But
Yeah,
the
right.
reason we're talking about synthetic voices is because when you go on CELA, the Center for Equitable Library Access, and go through the library, you notice that a ton of books are synthetic audio.
Mhm.
And I always wonder, who the hell is getting these? I don't want to listen to that. Although maybe I should because it would open up a lot of doors. Where do you stand on
Uh,
synthetic audio? I know
in
we've asked a
general,
ton of people.
yeah, and you know what I think we
Yeah.
should do? I think we should go through these responses and then, you know,
Be
A or
swayed.
B it. Yeah, like, you
Okay,
know what I
okay,
mean?
yeah.
Where do we sit in this opinion? 'Cause
Okay, sweet.
some of this stuff is so controversial. I'm very excited for people to chime in at home.
So for those who don't know, when you go on Seal and you download a synthetic audiobook, what you're actually downloading is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Grams,
Mm.
you're downloading a book that like it's like an audio file of a synthetic voice, right?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's not a daisy
Okay.
text. It
Mm.
is an audio file of a synth voice. You can't manipulate the voice that you're hearing. You're listening to it like audio. You could skip through. That's pretty much it.
All right, do you want to read the first one? We've got lots to get through.
Yeah. Sure. Hold up.
Actually, wait, before we do that,
What?
what was your actual question so that we know where these people are coming
So
from?
my question is, what's your tolerance of synth voices? Right? Can you stand listening to synth voices,
Oh, okay.
and what your tolerance level is? And clearly, it's a spectrum, okay? Because a lot of the people who've reached out, and you and I here on the show, are blind/low vision. We listen to audiobooks a ton. Some people are braille users. Some people listen to synth voices all the time, or they differentiate when they listen to synth voices. And then, of course, the big thing is screen reader, right? Like we all have screen reader familiarity, so we have niche opinions and deep opinions on this. So, I want to get into it.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
First one
also
is
AI.
Debbie.
AI came into this as well. Just a heads up about that.
Oh my god, yeah, how could we forget about
Yeah,
AI? Yeah, because AI narration is getting better and better and better, but
better and
like,
better, more and more popular.
and
It's
you'll
out
see
there.
that this is a common theme in a lot of the responses that we've
Hmm.
gotten. All right, so you
Hmm.
can read the first one from Debbie.
Yep, Debbie Giroux, she says, "Nope, I do not like synthetic audiobooks. I tried one and the voice was not too bad, but the page numbers were announced." Yeah, that's a rough
She
one,
tried
Debbie.
one.
Yeah, that's true too. In her years and years and years of being an Audible subscriber. Anyway, the page numbers thing is actually so annoying. I don't know if you've run into this, but anyone who listens to synth voice at all knows that this is a thing. The page numbers are announced at the end of every page, and it's ridiculous. And if you get a really bad one,
Oh my
sometimes you'll
god.
get like other footer or header information as well. And it just joins it as part of a
Oh,
sentence, and then you're
if it
like, what are you?
reads like footnotes
Yeah, yeah.
and the
Sometimes, yes.
formatting gets really lost, you
Yeah.
don't know what it's referencing. Oh
It's
yeah,
like, and
that
then he
can just be a
walked down the
nightmare.
stairs 22 and continued walking towards the 35. And you're like, what? How do I differentiate?
I'm not going back. Like I'm not skipping back 20 seconds. Like
Do you know
absolutely
how much
not.
extra work your brain has to do to kind of like separate the page numbers from the context of the stories?
And it's like, who cares about the numbers? Like, in
But
what
that's part of the
situation am I going to
scanning.
use the page numbers? If I'm like in English class, I'm 28.
No.
I'm not going back to English class.
And also, it's not even that. I don't think it's done on purpose. It's just one of these glitchy things that come with these synth scanning and finding of books.
To be fair, though, this is not something you come across like most of the time. Most of the time, you don't have to deal with it at all. The next one is from Terry Bray. Yes, I can stand listening to it, but I never choose it if there's a human narrated version. I mean, yeah, if you have the option, you're always going to go human narrated. But
Yeah.
sometimes some human narration is pretty bad. And the nice thing with synthetic audio is that it's not going to make any egregious pronunciation errors most of the time, unless it's like a proper noun.
The human or the synth?
The synth is going to be basically flawless in terms of pronunciation.
No. No, no.
Absolutely not. You program the dictionary right into it. When
Okay,
you talk
okay,
about
okay,
like
okay. Yes.
proper nouns
Yes,
and
you're
place
talking
names and stuff
fine,
like
but you
that,
say proper nouns like it is, one in a million. Are you kidding me? There are times when I'm just like, I don't know. Can you imagine reading fantasy in synth voice and it's just making up all
absolutely
kinds of
not.
pronunciation?
It's living in its own
Exactly.
world.
It, it's it's
Okay,
its
you know what?
own
That's a
version.
good point. Now I'm thinking about how often you come across proper nouns, and it's actually very often.
Can you imagine
That's a good
reading
point.
Harry Potter in a synth voice and never knowing what Dumbledore was actually supposed to be pronounced as because it just did its own thing?
Dumbledore,
Yeah.
Dumbledore.
Like it's not gonna work out. And you'll hear this, by the way. You'll hear this theme of like when people will use synth voices. Caroline Bordeaux says, I actually don't mind synthetic voices, and it's more about the book. I of course prefer narrated books, but if that's the only way I can access something, I don't mind at all. I have a few voices downloaded on my iPhone so that I can actually switch them depending on my mood. Well, that's nice. Caroline, that's a good
Depending
way
on
to
your
do it.
mood, like
Yeah.
if you're feeling cozy and kind of sleepy, you put a softer voice, that
What,
type of thing.
Samantha? Is that when
So,
Samantha is being used? Okay.
I don't think Samantha's got a smooth voice. She's got a clear, authoritative voice.
Yeah, she does actually. I agree with that. Yeah, or if you're just feeling like switching it up, I guess.
I guess so. I like switching it up, but when you have the choice of a synthetic voice, like you often do with a screen reader, you get very attached to certain voices, and it's to the point where if you swap voices, it becomes like really hard to actually understand and follow it. You have to slow it significantly,
Yep.
and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You get attached to your screen reader. It's yours. It's personalized. It's like it's special.
It's yours. Yeah, and honestly, like if you're just remember how we're talking about mispronunciations and stuff? That's what I meant
Hmm.
at the start of this conversation. At least you know what your Samantha's gonna do with a word when it's written a certain way. Whereas like other synth voices may do a different thing with it. And then you're like, no, I don't have time to figure out what you're doing with Dumbledore. Like I need you to I need it to be familiar.
Sometimes it'll actually get homonyms wrong as well. It'll mispronounce things like sometimes pudding and putting and gets
Oh
it
my
wrong.
god,
It drives me
yeah.
crazy.
Live and live. This is a
Oh
big one
yes,
for
yeah,
Alex.
that's
The
a big
big
one.
one,
Yes,
read and read. Oh yeah. No, you're right. Again, we're just
yeah.
like sifting through
You
these
get a
things as
message.
we're reading.
Have you read this? And you're like, yo,
Yeah.
get your grammar right. But it's the person did nothing wrong. Yes.
Join us live on AMI Audio.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, next one is from Kim Kilpatrick. She's from Ottawa. For audiobooks, I still love human narration. I know that text is improving, but I still love human narration for fiction. Nonfiction, I can handle synthetic speech. However, I read a lot of books in Braille, so I download the Daisy Text or EPUB to read with my Braille display. Do you make this distinction between
Yep.
fiction and nonfiction? Yeah, why?
For sure. Are you kidding? Because you know how you talked about there are a lot of synth audiobooks or synth voices available on Sela, right? Not always human narrated. And they have a ton in their catalog. So of course a lot of them is going to be synth. It's easier, it's more accessible, faster production. But nonfiction, I can handle. Whenever we've had recommendations for books that were nonfictions or historical fiction, that kind of thing, I'm like, I am way more likely to pick this up in synth audio and not immediately turn away or try to go find a human narrated voice on Audible or just say, no, I'm not reading this book altogether. Because nonfiction is closer to just article reading, right? Like you get y- because we're all screen reader users, or most of us are, I guess, we have the understanding of reading long form articles, etc., using a screen reader. So synth is not far off from that experience if it's nonfiction. Agree, disagree?
When you're listening to something that's nonfiction, it's typically trying to make a point and to be
Yes.
like factual, right? Especially if you're reading an article or like a historical treatise or something like that. And so when you remove the emotion and the kind of the subjectivity
Hmm.
of narration, it makes it more objective and more like fact based. It's more about the words, the point the author is trying to make. Whereas human narrated audio in fiction is really leaning into the emotion and the feeling and the vibe and the voice acting. There's a time and place for both. Sometimes I find listening to nonfiction with human narrated audio kind of weird, where because especially if it's something that's very opinionated, and then you hear like the voice of a narrator of like bringing to life the opinions of somebody else, it makes me wonder, like, I kinda just wanna hear the actual author's voice, because
Yeah,
like, basically,
that's
it's an actor faking
that's true.
opinionated views, right? Do you ever get that? Yeah,
Kinda, but
yeah.
honestly, like if you listen to people article read, and on AMI Audio, we've done this for years, right? Other
They're over
people
30
reading.
years, yeah.
Yeah, we've had people reading articles to us, and blind people, I think, are very familiar with that concept. I guess there might be a generational gap now, but still, generally speaking, there's like people reading out loud to us is also just norm, familiar, relatable, understandable. So I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think about it that hard. But do you think like the going back to what you said about facts and factual reading, if we think of all nonfiction that way, then does it really matter if it's a human telling us or not? Like, does it almost make the thing that we're reading easier to digest if it's synth than a human trying to convince us with their tones and their inflections?
I think it's important to have the type of reading that works best for your needs,
Hmm.
and I think
What a cop
comprehension
out answer. Listen to
comprehension
this
yo,
guy.
listen, because comprehension is like the number one thing you want out of whoever's reading a book to you. If it's making it more difficult for you to understand, then maybe you don't want a synthetic voice reading fiction.
Yeah,
But if
that's true.
you find that a human narrated nonfiction book is distracting or weird, then that's a problem, and you're probably better off just using your screen reader.
I'm telling you that sometimes that's how it is for me. Like I'll pick up a book and I feel so much less engaged when it's a human. And maybe it's the author reading it, but they're a poor performer, whatever it is. I don't know. Maybe the recording. Like all of these different things are very distracting to me. And so going back to the screen reader at the pace that I listen to when I'm reading an article or an essay, to read this nonfiction book, it sits better with me. You're right.
But you know what?
For comprehension.
Sometimes a human narrated audiobook, like some narrators just have exhausting voices, and I would genuinely prefer
What is an
listening to a
exhausting
fake
voice?
voice. Usually, when it's a very exaggerated performance with a lot of voice acting and a lot of ups and downs, that
Yeah.
type of thing,
Yeah,
it's
no,
not
too much.
exactly the most relaxing thing. You remember? Shout out to Wesley Morris, who narrated
Yeah.
The Wonder of Stevie. While
So
it
much
wasn't exactly an
enthusiasm.
audiobook, he did read a lot of things that were clearly scripted, and it was like pretty much the same thing as an
Hmm.
audiobook at some points, but he was incredibly just enthusiastic, almost too much so that he was like screaming into the microphone.
Trust me.
it was a bit much, but like he's just being himself.
Yeah. No, but exactly. Like stuff like that would not necessarily make for calming you down. Marcy Yale, who is an avid audiobook listener, but also I think reads Braille. This is her response. I used to listen to audiobooks. Oh, there you go. Until I realized that the narrator could kill a book for me.
Ugh.
Then I started to read ebooks read by Alex on my phone. Yes, Alex. 2 points for Alex. Do those count as audiobooks? Perhaps. Alex is certainly not human and he's narrating or reading the book for me, so I think that counts. If the synthetic voice is the right one, I can handle it. And I'd rather hear Alex read a book for me than a poorly narrated or poor human narrator. So there you go. She's basically second to her opinion.
To make it clear to everyone, Alex and Samantha are not real people. They're voices that have given to synthesized voices because they actually have like people names. Um, I don't know. What's your take on this one? You seem to agree.
I agree. Especially because she said Alex. I stopped listening after that point. Like, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's all stuff that I can relate to. Synth audio, specifically Alex, and specifically because of the familiarity of what my synth voice is bringing me versus a human narrator. I've definitely picked up books, listened to like a couple sentences or a couple pages of a human narrator, and then thought, oh my
Like
gosh,
no.
I'm gonna go get the ebook. Yeah. And by
I've
ebook, by the
Well,
way, we should clarify this as well because you asked about this earlier. The ebook you can download onto like Kindle, for example, Amazon's Kindle app, and get the e-text of the book and then use your screen reader to then read the book for you. And then you can adjust the volume, the
okay.
pacing, how you want it to scan or
And
flip your
if you're low
pages.
vision, you can visually look at it
Yes.
while it's being read
Yes.
back to you as well. It's
Exactly.
not like on Sela when you download a file that's like an audio recording of synthesized
That's right, which is
voices.
Daisy Audio. There's
Daisy
also
audio,
Daisy
yeah.
Text on Sela, which gives you this similar experience of a Kindle app read, right? Where you can follow along with the text and use your own screen reader. Some of these versions of the experiences are more accessible than others. I find Kindle to be pretty intuitive, reasonable at least, for using screen reader to read a text versus some of the other platforms out there. So,
Because you can import some pretty good voices into most screen readers, which is really nice. And
yeah,
goes back to that
right on your device.
customization, right?
Mhm.
Peter Tsitsinas says, I don't like any synthetic voice. My book club members also do not listen to synthetic audiobooks. So hard no for Peter and his people.
They are all, like, batting against synth voices.
And it doesn't even he doesn't even offer like an explanation. So
No,
just like,
I think this
but the thing
response
is,
actually started with a "no," by the way, I just
yes, I
cut it
just
off.
no. Oh, that's
No.
funny, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I feel like at this point, the default is yes to human narration. Like most
Yeah.
people are gonna lean in there. It's about supplementing when you don't have the option of human narration, which is often, by the way.
I
Um,
disagree. It's
Even
not
for like
just about the
niche books, though.
supplementation.
Hmm.
I think some of us are actually preferring synth voices for certain experiences of reading.
What
What?
books you want
You
to get
heard it.
through really quickly because
Quickly
you
or just
you
the
want
facts?
just the facts so you can skim read that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Flipping through pages. The Braille users, I think, here, generally speaking, are more open to the synth
Yeah, and we
stuff.
have some coming up. Do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Vangelis Nicias says, when reading literature for pleasure, I prefer human voices. For work, I do not mind synthetic at all. With synthetic voices improving all the time, I may even use it for literature. Okay, now
Ooh,
context. Vangelis reads a lot and he reads a lot of different kinds of books. Like he picks up, easily like 40 to 60 hour history books
oof.
regularly. Like there are things he's recommended to me. I'm like, whoa. So so this is the kind of stuff he reads and he's like, I can read using synth. I was definitely not referring to that type of nonfiction when I thought of reading through synth.
60 hours of a synthetic
Might have been an
voice.
exaggeration, but definitely 30 hour. Like 30 to 40 hour nonfiction reads using synth? I don't think so. That's a big commitment.
I feel like the longer you go with a synthetic voice in a book, the easier it gets. You just kind of get used
That's
to it.
fair.
You get used to the mistakes that it makes, right?
That
And
is so fair. Okay, and I know this firsthand. I read Gone with the Wind first time around using synth voice
like a
because
screen
I was
reader.
young and determined.
Wow.
And I was like, I know, I was like 20. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this, guys. I'm going to do Gone with the Wind because, I'm a pro. And it was only available in ebook format using the public library. And I did it using an e reader. And it was not horrible. It was not horrible. And by the end of the book, I really got to like feel it out. Like, it was fine. It was back in the day when I was using an Android too, so the
Oh,
synth voice
good
was
lord.
not good. It was not good.
Yeah, I guess it had to be soothing for you at that point. It
At some
must
point.
have been. At least you would not have done it if you thought it was even slightly annoying. I can't believe
Yeah.
you got through that. But the thing is,
Not just
because
through it, I
you're
loved it.
yeah, but because you got through it with your personal screen reader, people who know blind people will know that we speed up our screen readers a
Yes.
lot,
Yeah.
like 300 words per minute, sometimes even more. It's Are you listening to Gone with the Wind at that speed?
No, I don't think so. I had to slow it down. You know that there are paces that work for like quick reading and emails and text and whatever. And then there's different paces that you prefer if you're like reading the news or reading long, long articles.
Hmm.
Even if it's for pleasure, like it's different. How about for you? You adjust, right? You're pacing for that kind of stuff?
I've only read a handful of books, and they were all nonfiction using like a synthetic voice, like my screen reader, just like on like a PDF or something.
Yeah.
And I do slow it down. The funny thing is, just on my general day-to-day use of the screen reader, I adjust the speed a lot all the time. And
Okay.
it can vary between like very slow. Sometimes I almost double the speed, even more, if I'm reading articles where I mostly just want to skim. I'm not really looking for the details or anything like that.
What does it depend on? Does it depend on like how your ears feeling that day?
It depends on how much I care about the text.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's like I'm reading an article and I want to see, do I want to care about this? And if I come across a part that's really interesting, I'm like, wait, did I hear that right? I'll go back at the
Mm,
paragraph, slow it down. Oh wow, that politician really did do that. Wow, I can't believe that.
yeah.
That type of thing. It's what sighted people do. They skim all the time. We can do it too, sort
Yeah.
of.
That's what I mean. That's why that e-text or like I love the nuances of some of these responses because it's true. It feels like we're trying to parallel somewhat of a cited experience or, like it doesn't have to be just human narrated storytelling audiobooks. Like there are different reasons why we
Mm.
would pick up some of these approaches. You do have some screen readers that you want to play for us though. I don't remember the purpose of why, but
So we've been talking about the screen readers that we use. So how about we actually listen to what a screen reader sounds like? This is my screen reader with Samantha,
okay.
and v- this is a common experience that people who are blind have all the time. Is when some sighted person hears our screen reader, they go, "There's no way you can understand that," and
I'm
I
gonna be
want to
the sighted person in this scenario. I
you're
can
gonna
already
be the
tell.
sighted
I
person in
can
this
tell.
scenario. This is Samantha playing at 100% speed, literally the fastest it can go. Some blind people can understand this. I want to know if you can tell me what this paragraph is talking about.
Systemic issues. Good dental hygiene begins with fundamental oral care. This includes brushing teeth at least twice a day with fluoride toothpaste and using soft toothbrush to prevent damage to the gums and enamel. Brushing should begin for a minimum of 2 minutes, ensuring that all surfaces of the teeth are cleaned effectively. Additionally, replacing the toothbrush every 3 to 4 months is recommended, as long as the become infected.
Is she done? Clearly, I can't tell what she's even done.
I think she's done. I was
So
squinting to try and hear that better.
yeah, no kidding. Oh, you can't understand it properly either? Oh, is
Well,
this your idea
I
of
think I
skimming?
can understand because I'm the one that recorded it, so I know
Yeah,
exactly
you
what she's
cheated.
talking about. I kind of
Alright.
cheated. So,
Something about
any ideas?
toothbrushing and,
Yeah,
oral care or hygiene, but say something
no
about the World
details.
Health. Yeah, I can't tell you what she said to do or not do. Can we listen to it one more time?
Yeah, okay. How about one more time, but it's
This
at
is
60%. This is a
such a
little slower.
sidetrack. Oh, okay, okay.
Maintaining good dental hygiene is crucial for overall health and well-being. Proper oral care not only preserves the appearance of one smile but also prevents a range of potential health complications. By understanding the basics of dental hygiene and adopting consistent habits, individuals can significantly reduce the risks of dental and systemic issues. Good dental hygiene begins with the fundamentals of oral care. This includes brushing teeth at least twice a day with fluoride toothpaste and using a soft bristle toothbrush to prevent damage to the gums and enamel. Brushing should be done for a minimum of 2 minutes, ensuring that all surfaces of the teeth are cleaned effectively. Additionally, replacing the toothbrush every 3 to 4 months is recommended, as worn bristles can become ineffective.
Okay, yeah. Okay, no, I understood all that.
Yo,
I
all
feel
the
like I could do it
sighted
at
people
90. I feel like I could do
at
it at
90?
90. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about
100 was
right.
just
Yeah.
a little too fast. This felt
Yeah.
like it could be faster.
All the sighted people that are listening to this right now, they just went on Team Human Narration. They're just like, absolutely not a chance. But you need to understand that even blind people, they slow down their screen readers often. It's
Yeah.
just like the day-to-day stuff that we're going to be using it that fast. Anyways, we have more responses to get to.
Yeah,
This
super
next
quick.
one is from Jeff Rainey. He says, while I don't mind the dulcet tones of my screen reader, yeah, dulcet, sure. The way that Sela compiles synthetically narrated audiobooks is truly awful and
Oof.
genuinely second-class audiobook listening.
No. Jeff.
Second class. AI can go either way, and even with a voice that is 90% passable as human, there's still certain things that he can't get correct. Even with those universal voices that you hear reading TikTok scripts
Ugh.
or in radio and TV commercials.
Yo, those ones are awful. The universal TikTok clips, like, send this to 5 people if, and I'm just like, oh man. And if they're so
The,
popular, it's like the same two voices that we hear all the time.
at this point, those two things have become memes.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
And
memes. Do
yeah,
you hear like the Joe Rogan AI that's just everywhere? I don't know if this is new or not, but Joe
yeah, I've
Rogan
seen
is
that.
all over my feed, and it's never the real him. I'm not gonna lie though, I definitely at least watched like 3 videos thinking it was him, and then was like, wait a
Oh,
minute.
you got bamboozled.
Yeah, I
Oh,
did, I
that's
did, I did.
awful.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
awful.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't. Yeah.
All
Anyways,
right.
Grant Hardy. What? Yeah, what
Yeah,
were
and I
you
was
gonna
gonna
say?
say this next perspective is really good. I really like
Yeah.
what Grant had to say.
I like this one as well. Okay, so Grant Hardy from AMI's The Pulse says, I listen to almost all my books as ebooks using synthesized speech. I like the ability to have words spelled out, look at the punctuation, etc., etc. And it's amazing how much I can feel like I'm transported to the story, even with synthesized speech. I don't think I'd buy or download an actual ebook file that's just synthesized speech, though.
Yeah.
That sounds like it
Mm.
would have none of the advantages that I just described while still being a robotic voice. Not sure I see the point in that. I'd rather have either a human or get access to the ebook where then I can use whatever voice I want. Yes, Grant, this is so succinct. I really, really appreciate this opinion because exactly. He's a braille reader as well. He uses braille like often for in daily life for work and etc etc.
Mhm.
Sorry, Grant, don't mean to speak on behalf of you, but only because it gives so much context to like paying attention to grammar and spelling and getting the ins and outs of the language as you're reading, right? And some of the stuff is totally out of your hand if you're just listening to a synth voice in audio format, which would throw you off completely, or listening to human narration.
It's such a good point that he made too about if you're using a screen reader and you actually have access to the text, like the
Yes.
text, you can go back and look at spelling,
Hmm.
like sighted people do and how people who read Braille can. And that's something I have to say I do miss a lot. And when I
Yeah.
had to read a book preview that was by PDF recently, I forgot how awesome it was to be able to do that. And I found
Hmm.
myself doing it often because I'm just using control down arrow to go paragraph by paragraph.
Yep.
And if I came across a word I never come across before, I was really tempted to go and see how it was spelled. And especially names. And because it's synthetic audio, you want to
Yeah.
go there and see how it's actually like spelled, right?
Spelled.
And also just words that you're like, I wonder how you spell that. You just become
Absolutely.
better at spelling. My spelling rams has gotten so much worse since I've been
Of
blind for
course.
about like 5 years now.
This is
Mm.
super, super relatable for people.
Mhm.
And honestly, you have, there are a lot of advantages to reading ebooks, but it is a bit of a process to get into it if all you're listening to is human narration now, or all you ought to listen to is human narration. It does take some time to like pause and try to figure out a different process. Sharon Johnston said quickly, a big no when it comes to audiobooks in synthetic format. I will not read or even download it once I see that it's a synthetic narration. I'll only read the audiobooks in human narration. I find the synthetic narration to be super monotone,
Yeah.
puts me to sleep, and doesn't let me imagine the characters or really allow me to get into the book. So, big no on that one.
The
Womp.
wildest thing though is that the newest AI voices, like the ones from 11 Labs,
Yeah.
are not monotone at all.
No, they're good.
They're actually quite articulate in a bit of an artificial way, but you can't call them monotone.
No.
I remember testing it out, and you can give sort of like dialogue cues, like saying "the man squealed," and then you write the text, and then it'll actually do like a high pitched voice. It's really funny, but like it
You can get
understands that
yourself
type of
reading
thing.
things on 11 Labs, right? Put your
You
own
can
voice
get
in.
you can get yourself reading things on 11 Labs in different languages. You could make
Yeah.
yourself speak Mandarin
Oh my gosh. Oh,
in Japanese.
If you have a friend who you wish was reading audiobooks because you love their voice, do it.
Oh,
Do
that's
it in
so
11 Labs.
true.
Yeah.
You'd be good for audiobooks, Rams.
Haha.
I could see you
Thanks.
read like very important biographies.
I'll
I mean
stick to
that.
reading people's comments on the show. That's fun.
And we got through all of them.
Yeah, we
Really good
did.
insights from everyone. It sounds like such a like a minute topic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something you have to grapple with, especially when you talk about availability and what you want to read, and sometimes what you have
Yes.
to read. It's you kind of have to grapple with this.
Yeah.
Rams, thank you so much. You were the one that brought this to our attention and organized all the questions. You're the best. I'll talk to you later this week.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who jumped in as well. Later.
Yeah, thanks everyone. That was AMI's Rami Yomathan. She's the producer for AMI Audiobook Review. But that's all the time we have for this segment of AMI Audiobook Review. Because it's worth clarifying, AMI Audiobook Review is a segment that's part of the show, AMI Today. You can say that AMI Audiobook Review is a sub-brand, if you will, of AMI Today. There are 2 audiobook review segments that air during the second half of AMI Today's time slot. The first is on Tuesdays, and the other one is on Fridays. AMI Today airs weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeats every 6 hours. Note that both Audiobook Review and AMI Today still have their separate podcast feeds. So make sure you can find those on your favorite podcast platform. And they're also available on YouTube, by the way. Thanks for joining us on AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shamlansky. Have a good one.